Welcome, everyone. This is Todd Zipper here, and I'm going to be giving the webinar today on creating an ideal marketing plan for your online school. I am the Executive Vice President and Chief Marketing Officer of the Learning House. Very excited to be here, just braving the cold weather here in Louisville, Kentucky. Hopefully everybody else is staying warm out there. So just a couple of housekeeping items before we really get into things, and I'll let a few stragglers kind of get onto the webinar and get started. So just on some instructions, we welcome questions and comments during the webinar. If you would like to participate, you can really through two ways. You could type a question via the chat feature, or raise your hand, and I will try to get to everybody. I like this to be as interactive as possible. We've scheduled an hour today, but we have also scheduled about another 30 minutes that I'm willing to stay around and answer questions. So it might go over a little bit. This is my first webinar using this service, so feel free to help me along. And then last thing is that we're going to be sending around all the slides at some point in the next day, so you can all, so you don't have to take too many notes. You'll be getting everything via email. And just before we get into it, we want to take a quick poll about the following. Three questions that we have. The first is, how many online programs does your school currently offer? That's the first one. The second one is, do you market individual programs, the entire school online, or nothing? And then third is, what percentage of revenue of online programs is dedicated to marketing? So as I go through this presentation, I'm sure these questions will become clear on why we're asking these. But hopefully today the outcome is to get you all a little bit smarter or more aware of some of the issues and tactics and strategies that you can have to be successful in growing online programs at your school. Okay, so moving to our agenda for today. I've divided up the process of creating an ideal marketing plan into 7 steps. This slide will act as really the table of contents for this presentation, as well as overall creating an ideal marketing plan. The first two steps that you see here really define the current reality. So first, I like to think about taking a look at the big picture. Before you jump into the deep end, it's really important that you have a good sense of all the macro factors surrounding your strategic marketing plan. Second, we recommend creating a due diligence checklist as it relates to what exists or doesn't exist at the institution across all the functions to make sure there are no barriers for success. Third, we recommend setting clear and concise and measurable goals. Fourth, the most common question that I get when meeting with schools about their marketing efforts is, which program should we offer? So it's critical that you create a product development strategy which includes performing robust marketing research. And fifth, make a list and begin building out creative marketing assets that you will need while executing on your campaigns. Sixth, select lead gen channels. This is what many people consider to be the marketing plan. It's important to look at all the available options. Budget constraints and performance metrics will steer you in one direction or another, but I'm going to give you the full suite of different options available to you. And finally, seventh, create a robust execution process that includes approvals, implementation, budgeting, and reporting. Developing reports to measure progress is of the utmost importance. So this is kind of setting the tone today for what we're going to cover. Step one, taking a look at the big picture. As a marketer, you need to be concerned about everything that is going on in the institution and whether it can help or hinder your efforts. I favor reporting structures that have marketing and admissions under one roof, since these two functions are so inextricably linked. Additionally, curriculum or product development is extremely important, as this is the future of what you can market. You want to have a voice in what gets developed. And finally, Some of the larger and more entrepreneurial online offices have started to add a member of the development team to their staff. The thought is to treat these students in the online world as quote-unquote real students. Fundraising, alumni events for prospects, market research. You can survey this new group to see if programs are successful. So this chart shows a fact that even though most of us in the online world have been part of this massive growth over the last decade or so, the reality is that growth is slowing. And if you see by 2015, things are going to the growth is going to kind of decline to the point where it's going to be in parity with overall post-secondary growth. And recently, the Babson survey that just came out talked about that growth for the first time really ever had gone below 10%. So although the growth in online programs and fully online students is still very robust, it's something that you need to be aware of, that growth is slowing. And really what this means to me, as I go to my next slide here, is that while growth is slowing, competition is becoming more and more fierce. So, this is something that, you need to be thinking about. The day of rising tides lifting all boats, I think, is really behind us. So if you look at this survey right here, it really just shows that, chief academic officers are more and more, and even in the last year or so, focusing on online education as a critical part of their strategy. So to me, what that means, there are going to be more programs, and it's just something that you need to be aware of, that you have to be innovative, you have to be ahead of your competitors in thinking about building and launching online programs. So not to be Debbie Downer too much, these are examples that I've looked at and followed over the last 10 years. 5 different schools, mostly not-for-profit, although one here is a convert from for-profit to nonprofit. From nonprofit to for-profit, that have had incredible growth and have done it very strategically over many years, and really has created a nice symbiosis between their ground programs and their online programs. So, on one hand, competition is fierce. On the other hand, we think there's plenty of opportunity to create complementary and robust online programs, as demonstrated by some of these schools listed here. So before you start any marketing plan, you need to ask yourself, where does your school's brand resonate? Are you a local, regional, or national player? Overall or by program, where does your brand resonate? How is the market view degrees coming out of your school? Asking these questions will help ground you in devising the early parts of program development and marketing plans. I have many schools that I work with who want to, instantly go national or into a state that really their brand doesn't resonate with. And, what we've learned is that students really end up going to schools where brands they recognize and within regionally located to their domicile. So.
Thomas Pettit asked, when is it appropriate to bring all marketing in-house versus using vendors?
Okay, so we have one question here from Thomas Pettit, and let me just. Okay, so I'm not seeing it here. So when is it appropriate to bring in house? Is that the question? That's a great question. What I would say to you, I think a lot of this has to do with scale and expertise. So on the scale side, how big is your online program? I mean, ultimately, I don't know what the magic number is if you're dealing with a few hundred students versus a few thousand students. I think the question about bringing it in-house is obviously going to be more appropriate if you have a few thousand students, whether you have a few hundred students. On the flip side of that, I mean, I'm a little biased in saying this. I think it's important to really do what you do best as an institution. So having different vendors help you in marketing your programs doesn't mean you lose control over your marketing efforts. It just means that you're leveraging them in areas where you may not have expertise. For example, in search engine marketing, whether it's organic search or paid search, these are very technical skills that is typically not advantageous to bring in-house, really ever. I mean, if you look at some of the biggest institutions out there, from the for-profits to nonprofits, very few of them have some of those technical skill sets in-house. So I think it just depends on the function, and it depends on the size of the school. So Grand Canyon probably does a blend of both. This is actually a school that I used to work with when I used to run a company called Education Connection, and they do certain things in-house, but they absolutely outsource other things, whether it's, and we're going to get into some of these lead gen channels, but they work with a lot of different affiliates or lead aggregators to generate leads, but they do have a pretty sizable staff. But again, Grand Canyon's about 35,000 or so students. Okay, so I'm going to move on to the next thing. Thank you for that good question. So this goes with the last slide, and this is something that's very important to me, but where do the organic leads exist? This is really one of the first questions that you need to be thinking about, is harvesting those organic leads. So I would argue that the key to a successful marketing campaign is learning how to harvest these organic leads from any source, whether they're referrals or search or alumni, et cetera. So, in our second point here, organic leads bring down overall student acquisition costs. This is key when trying to launch paid media campaigns that on surface don't seem economically viable. Third, organic leads exist for your institution. The question for the marketer in the school is, where are they? If you don't harvest these organic leads, another school will. This goes with point 4, which is about, from our perspective, cannibalization is a myth. If you look at many of the leading online schools that we talked about in the previous slides, they all have strong ground programs. So a lot of schools are afraid to launch online programs that might cannibalize the ground programs, but ultimately students are going to choose to go online, because that's what they want to do. So if you don't offer them the options, they're going to go in that direction. So, a couple examples here is, in picking the low-hanging fruit. If you have a strong RN program on ground, it would make a lot of sense for you to launch an RN to BSN program. Or if you have very popular undergraduate business programs and lots of graduates in the marketplace who eventually want to get their MBA, that would be another great place to start.
There's a question about cannibalization. How can we bust the myth of cannibalization?
Great question about how can we bust the myth of cannibalization. What I would say is, I think you need to look at the leading online schools of today. The example that I like to look at most is Grand Canyon. Grand Canyon is a not-for-profit, for-profit conversion that, unlike several other these in the marketplace, they took their ground programs, extremely important, and now I think they've doubled or tripled the number of ground students. It's a very key part of their online strategy. Many of our best customers at Learning House have this great symbiotic relationship between ground programs and online programs. The more you build your online programs, the more your brand sort of gets disseminated, and the more you can build your on-ground programs. So for us, that's how we really look at this as a cannibalization. I mean, yes, does cannibalization to exist throughout all of post-secondary? Yes, online is growing faster than on-ground, but again, if you're not doing the cannibalization, somebody else will. Thank you for that question. So moving on to step 2, creating a due diligence checklist. So before we take on a new school at Learning House to perform the marketing and enrollment management functions, we have the school fill out a very long and robust checklist. The checklist cuts across all the major verticals, including the organization as a whole, curriculum, training, technology, admissions, retention, and of course, marketing. Ultimately, we are looking for obstacles that might get in the way of successfully launching and marketing online programs. Some examples of must-have to be competitive, which is really what this list here, is what you're trying to do for these first three things here that you see is we're trying to cut down on the shopping of students. Right now, the typical online students is evaluating, at least 3 options, taking 6 months to make their decision. So what we're trying to identify, and what you should be trying to identify, is where are these gaps? Do you have enough start dates? If you don't, consumers get antsy. They're going to want to go somewhere else. What is your, what is your transfer credit, process like? So students have a reasonable period of time to know how many transfer credits they have. In our 2012 online learner study, we found that more than 80% of undergraduate online learners brought transfer credit to their online institutions. So, what this really means is that, consumers want to transfer credit into your institution. They have credit. You've got to make that process simple for them. The next thing is conditional acceptance. This allows students to stop, again, the shopping effort and even take courses before all their paperwork is final. A lot of the for-profits have kind of pioneered some of these best practices. We don't think this cuts down on quality, on student outcomes and achievements. It's just really just business process improvement. Next point is offering a variety of degrees at each key level. What we find is that if you bring somebody, in at the associate level for, let's say, criminal justice or business, wouldn't you want them to continue at the bachelor's level and potentially even the master's level? This is really important from a lifetime revenue standpoint, which is really, ultimately as a marketer, that's the number you're looking for to be able to base your marketing cost per acquisition numbers off of. And we're going to be talking a lot more of that in the latter part of the presentation. Next, competitive price points kind of go without saying, but where brand was kind of king and key 10 years ago or even 5 years ago, what we continue to find is that consumers, and especially by program, are really being very sensitive around price point. It's very easy for them to compare, and there's lots of different options. Finally, clear course maps is another example where important mapping out a student's term-by-term course schedule, which increases retention ultimately and gives them clarity on when and how to finish their degree. Great. So moving right along, we're going to go to step 3 now around setting goals. So goals are critical, but not just the high-year 5-year plan goals. So first, I've kind of broken this down into, mission goals. There needs to be a mission goal, especially with a mission-driven institution. How does it fit in, with your online goals? How does that fit in with the rest of the institution? I think, again, one of my big themes of today is alignment. You need to make sure that you're constantly aligned with the institution as a whole. If you're not, I think you're going to continue to run into roadblocks. On the quantitative side, I advocate for goals across 3 different categories. First, marketing goals, and we're going to be talking a lot about these throughout the presentation: cost per lead, cost per start, lifetime value. Admissions and enrollment goals, overall for the entire list of programs, by program, your contact rate percentage, your application rate percentage, acceptance rate, start rate, etc. And finally, retention goals. What are the retention and persistence rates that you're expecting? These are really important as, again, you think through your lifetime value calculations. So it looks like I forgot to click the slide. Sorry about that, everyone. So now let me move on to step 4. Performing market research. So in working to answer the $64,000 question that I'm asked regularly, what program should I offer? There are several considerations I think you should think about. The first area is to consider performing robust marketing research. As part of this, I think it's important that you understand which programs are popular online. For example, Learning House did a study in the summer of 2012 where we surveyed the market and created a top 10 list of online programs for graduate and undergraduate studies. There's no reason to sort of reinvent the wheel here. See what's popular out there, and you should be considering offering those online. Additionally, we recommend doing some kind of market study that includes forecasts of labor trends and employers in your area, government regulations, and of course, a thorough competitive analysis. Second, and this goes with the due diligence checklist we just talked about, identify your strengths. to me, I continue to believe that where your strengths are is where you should be focusing on in the beginning. For example, if you have strong faculty and programs on ground, it's likely you will have good success online. Niche programs can work online as well, which once successful, usually you can get really good referral rates on. You can also, this allows you to expand beyond your geography because, if you don't have a lot of competition, let's say in a PhD program or a specific technology program, you can go beyond your borders, which can sort of open you up to new markets.
We have another question. Should we build a budget off of lead gen or lead gen to drive the budget?
Okay, so we have another question about lead gen, which is, can you repeat that? Sorry.
Should we build the budget off of lead gen, or should lead gen drive the budget?
Okay, I'm not sure about this question. Should we driving the budget off of lead gen? My feeling about budgeting, and we're going to talk about this, is it's a very dynamic and fluid process. So from my perspective, I actually look at things on an annual basis, but also really break it down on a monthly basis. So if I am hitting my lead goals, my start goals, my retention goals, I almost, pitch to schools as have an unlimited budget. So if you can acquire a student at a certain dollar amount and your lifetime revenue is going to be whatever percentage greater that you need to be, you should have an unlimited budget, really. So that's how I think about higher education marketing. Obviously, it doesn't work out that way in the practical world, but you need to have that conversation constantly with your administrators, which is that, if you're performing well, then why wouldn't you open up more budget? If that cost per start, which is really how you gauge all these things, starts to go up too much, then you need to kind of bring down that marketing spend. So that's kind of how I think about things, and I think answer to that question might become more clear as we get through some more of these slides. So thanks for that question. So the next slide, this just gives you, there's just a lot of opportunity that I see here. This is just a list. You all get this list. I want you to all know about the popular programs. If you're considering launching new ones right now, you should be considering these. Okay, great. So a few other considerations when thinking about which programs you should build and market. First, another factoid from our online learner survey is that 80% of people attend online schools within 100 miles of their home. So the conclusion here is having a substantial market share in your market is critical and really a first point that you want to make. Second, curriculum ladders are a great way to leverage faculty and bring down overall marketing costs. For example, and I mentioned this before, having both an RN to BSN and an MSN is a great way to get more lifetime revenue from a customer instead of losing that successful and happy graduate in the RN to BSN program to another school. And third, considering new types of populations like alumni, accelerated high school students, and even seniors can dictate which programs might work best for which audiences. Okay, great. Moving right along. We are on to step 5 right now, which is this area, perhaps goes without saying, building creative marketing assets. But any robust online school needs to have a full suite of creative assets that are best in breed. This is the first contact in many cases with potential students. First, here's a list of creative marketing assets that will most likely be created at some point during your marketing campaigns. You need to consider both online and offline marketing assets. You can see through this list here. Second, I want to highlight the last bullet of creative developed, for branding purposes versus direct response purposes. And in the next couple slides we're going to get into this a little bit more. But I believe, in my experience, that this is a bone of contention a lot for many schools, especially nonprofits. They're very connected to their brand and its promise. And my contention is that you can accomplish both through the right creative design, the right calls to action, done eloquently and smartly. You can really get out of both, and it's very important to be able to measure things. Schools should consider the use of landing pages when sending paid traffic to a website. I find that in my experience, a lot of schools send their traffic to their main.edu website, and I think that's okay. But really, at the end of the day, you need to measure some of your paid efforts. So, really, what you're trying to do, with doing landing pages, you're converting potential consumers to a lead or inquiry more quickly than if a consumer just went to the main.edu website. And second, you create better tracking for your paid media sources. Our last section of this presentation is on dashboards, and I find that you are much better informed to make decisions about where to spend media when you can track some of the direct results of the paid forms of advertising. Lastly, most consumers will decide to go directly to the website or to Google and type in the name of the school. This is going to happen. There's nothing you can do about it. The good news right now is that advertising technology is getting smarter and smarter, and it will allow you to track these clicks. So if you do have them click on a banner ad, or one of these landing pages, even if they go out and go on to the search engines and type things in, with the use of the right technology, you can still track that back, so you can see if these efforts that you're doing on the paid side are driving more traffic to your main websites.
There's a question about social media.
Okay, there's a question out there about social media.
Does it work? Does social media work, and what's the preferred channel?
So, question about social media, does it work, and what are the preferred channels? So this is probably another 1-hour lecture that we can give. I think the answer is yes, social media works, but it's kind of like even paid search and organic search. If you don't know what you're doing, I think you're going to get burned pretty quickly. I think you have to have a very robust strategy that includes, how you disseminate content through social media. So whether the institution is creating content, whether it's blogs or just, different content about individual programs, they need to have a strategy around getting that out through the different channels like Facebook and Twitter and Google Plus and LinkedIn. Let's say those are kind of the big four. There needs to be a very kind of systematic way of using those engines to kind of get the word out, and even just things like, you post 4 times a day, on Google Plus and 6 times a day on Facebook, so these messages don't get lost. So yes, we do recommend the use of social media. It's difficult to track and to measure some of the results, but we find that pretty much everybody uses social media these days, and it's a place you need to be. Thanks for that question. So moving to our next slide, hopefully you'll find some of this information useful. When I get to look at a website, I look for several critical components that a marketing website for online programs needs to include. And there's obviously longer list than this, but these are some things. One, there needs to be a clear and prominent call to action. Second, contact information should be prominently located in a few options. And when I say contact information, an 800 number, preferably email address. Third, many consumers, will want to go right into filling out an application, so this should be also prominently located as well. Fourth, display the fields of study. Ultimately, this is the school's product lineup, so you should be putting that front and center in the most organized way you can. Fifth, website promoting online programs should have several prominent links on the main.edu website and should complement the look and feel of the main the .edu website. So this is something we're going to talk about in a second, but I find when I go into a lot of main websites, schools are very concerned and skittish about sending consumers off to a marketing site as it relates to online programs, and we recommend doing that, because consumers can get lost, they don't find what they want, they leave. Next, or sixth, the website should be maximized for SEO, to enhance organic search leads. This is absolutely critical. So this is really both on-site efforts, technical things that you have to do on your website, to content marketing and off-site SEO efforts. And finally, we recommend the use of live chat. The theory here, and I use it regularly with a lot of success, is that you've paid a lot of money or you've gotten people to your storefront, why not greet them? you know, a lot of times they can't find, you know, what they're looking for. It helps to have live chat to help people along in that process. So here is, you know, a nice partnership that an example of a main.edu website on the left and their online campus on the right. You know, again, online should not be viewed as something completely separate, even though it will be measured separately. You know, the website on the right complies with all the checklist points we talked about on the previous slide, including brand continuity, clear calls to action, live chat, list of programs. It's just a terrific website. So I'm going to give you an example of a commercial that we produced for one of our customers, and really the main point of this, and I'm sure we all watch TV regularly and see education commercials, is really to show that I think education commercials for you know, higher education institution can really combine, you know, a good service, you know, public service announcement about online education, about the brand, but also you know, try to drive a clear call to action so you can ultimately measure the results. So I'm going to just click on another slide right now, and hopefully this will work.
I wanted the flexibility of taking classes online, but I also wanted the advantages of being on campus. Then I heard about Concordia University St. Paul. It's right here in my own backyard. Now I can get the best of both worlds, affordable online programs and faith-based campus support. With Concordia St. Paul Online, I have a personal advisor and professors who are available over the internet or in person. Who else does that? Concordia University St. Paul is recognized globally and respected by employers, and that's good for me and my career. And there's no shortage of alumni who have some very impressive distinctions and salaries. Concordia University St. Paul is a private nonprofit school. They're responsive, relevant, real. And that's why I'm getting my online degree right here in my own backyard.
Get more information about undergrad and graduate degree programs. Log on to concordiabackyard.com.
So, you know, I think you probably saw on the last part, you know, a unique URL address. So didn't even use, you know, you can play with a lot of these things on how to get, you know, you can drive people into a specific funnel. But hopefully that gives you a good idea of different stuff that can be done out there. So we have a question. I think somebody's raising their hand. Mark from William Woods. I don't know how to see if I can. Yeah, we're going to try to unmute you here, Mark. But as we're waiting for Mark, I mean, if anybody has any questions, we're doing great on time. You know, feel free to raise your hand, virtually speaking, and or throw a question out there. Okay. So Mark, you're unmuted. You can talk.
Okay. So my question is, what is your take on, what are the advantages to having the online campus site be distinct or separate from the overall traditional university website?
Well, good question. Let me be clear on that. I don't think it should be completely distinct. I mean, I see certain examples of that. Even I think like an eDrexel is maybe a completely separate site. We actually advocate for being a part of the main website, but maybe as a strong microsite. So one, that there's prominent links from the main.edu website to the online programs, but really what we're advocating for is not to necessarily bury the online programs in departments or undergraduate or undergraduate, but to have separately as like a list of programs and descriptions and testimonials, let's say, so because consumers, if they have it in their mind that they want an online program or a hybrid program, they kind of need to go there to get content relevant and specific to online. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's perfect. I appreciate that.
You got it, Mark. Okay, so moving to the next section, selecting lead gen channels. This is probably my my favorite section, and we can talk about this next slide for an entire hour because it's the world I come from. But this is how we look at how are you going to reach people, and these are all the different ways that we think you can reach people, and this is how we've divided it up. So we divide up the marketing channels into 3 buckets: online marketing, traditional marketing, and partnerships. The other interesting way I like to organize this is by talking about paid media and unpaid media. And I think it's important that you understand within these channels what's a truly a paid source, meaning like you put media out there, you pay directly for media, and you get a lead from it, hopefully, and that converts to a student, versus an unpaid media source, which obviously you want to maximize as much as possible the unpaid sources to be able to then use more paid media and create this nice virtuous cycle. So, within just a quick blurb about each of these areas, online marketing, you should consider using, what's called affiliate marketing, what we call pay-per-lead marketing. This is a very, what I like to, in quotations, say dangerous area where a lot of the for-profits have kind of clogged this area up in that it's highly competitive. You're competing for leads. It's pretty expensive these days. So if you don't have an admissions process that can sort of react quickly, then you probably want to avoid that sector. Pay-per-click we think is extremely important because consumers spend most of their time searching and researching on search. Display is a great area for programmatic specific marketing and regional marketing. Organic is something we focus heavily on because, again, going back to the pay-per-click area, you got to be complementing your paid search efforts. Finally, emailing. We think there needs to be robust emailing efforts, both to internal lists like alumni, old leads, we call them recycled leads, to also buying third-party lists. And then, we can talk about traditional marketing. We definitely think traditional marketing is not dead. It's live and well. I think it complements online really well, especially in your regions. Direct mail, I think, is having a comeback a little bit. You see billboards, radio, TV, print. I think depending on budgets, you need to be considering all these different opportunities. Public relations, we think, is very important because this is an opportunity for whether it's your deans or different people representative of the institution getting on local TV shows and talking about, just public service about online education, about higher education, and getting the brand out there. That's really important. Finally, about partnerships, this is an area that I think the for-profits have done a really good job with, and many of you seen the new University of Phoenix commercial, it's pretty much all about that. We think that really partnering with corporations, with the government, with military and the military itself, with military organizations, and different events based on different, let's say, nursing conferences, et cetera. These are all really good areas to build relationships and ultimately to drive consistent lead flow at ultimately, hopefully, very low cost per acquisitions. And it looks like we've got somebody with a question. Denise from Palo Alto University. Hi, Denise. You're on the line. Denise, you can talk. We've unmuted your phone.
Oh, right. No, I was just trying to see what best practices around being able to justify hiring an on-site marketing manager / webmaster. Because currently we're outsourcing those, and I'm just wondering what the best practice is around that.
The best practice of the actual process of hiring someone, the hiring process, or the individual?
No, just the size of the student body.
At what point do you hire somebody to do those tasks? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, again, I think that's a personal choice. I would say that if you are seriously taking online education, not as kind of like a support to the ground programs, but you have fully online programs and you have fully online students, and you are being dedicated a marketing budget. Let's just call it $250,000 or more. I would say you should be hiring I mean, you just threw in a few different skill sets, at least one person to kind of sit between these efforts and even manage the vendors for you. But things like, manage the social media, they can do that directly, manage the emailing process, managing the campaigns. I would say at that point, I would be hiring somebody.
Okay.
Does that help?
Yeah, very helpful. Thank you.
Great. We have another question here from Melissa, Presbyterian Day School. Melissa, you're on the line.
No, I had no question.
Oh, okay.
I'm
no
sorry.
problem.
I was just asking if I missed the beginning part of it, and I wanted to make sure I was going to be able to capture this webinar to catch up.
Oh yeah, we're still in the thick of it here, Melissa.
Okay.
Okay, great. All right, so that brings us to our final slide, but we're gonna definitely spend some time here, which is step 7, creating marketing execution process. So from our perspective, the marketing execution process consists of several parts. First, are approvals. This might go without saying, but I think it's very helpful to create clear approvals around 1, media buying, and 2, creative. I constantly see delays, happening in these 2 areas, and in the world that we live in, online marketing especially, you got to make quick decisions within a day, within a couple days, and therefore, I suggest having an approval process that's pretty streamlined. Second, vendor implementation. This is especially important as it relates to technology and reporting. We're going to get into that. As you're trying to track different data, you need to implement vendors in ways with specific tracking codes, and therefore I recommend having a process around implementation. This is especially important for the pay-per-lead channel. If you're launching new vendors, you want to be able to do this quickly so you can move on and constantly iterate on different efforts that you're doing. I mean, that's, again, another theme that I would throw out is, as a marketer, you need to be constantly iterating on new things and trying new things, because most things that you're going to do are not going to work, and so it's really getting to the things that will work. Third is the budget. It's key that you build out detailed budgets and forecasts for online programs in terms of number of starts, retained students, revenue, and marketing expenditure. If you're just kind of given a budget, by some higher up and asked to just go ahead and do things, I think you're going to be flying blind a lot on how what you're doing sort of interacts with the rest of the really the equation. Fourth, reports, or what I like to call dashboards. We think you should have very clear reports on daily, weekly, monthly, or term basis to help evaluate what is working from what is not working. And I'm actually going to show you a few examples of dashboards and reports that we use. And I recommend that you do your own creation of different dashboards. And I could give a whole lecture just on that as well. We have a question.
Thomas, is there a report or neutral feedback channel on the different or top 20 vendors for the online higher education sector?
Okay, so there's a report about, on the top 20 online vendors for the higher education sector. Can I ask a clarifying question? Is this relates to lead aggregators, or is this just in general marketing agencies, anybody who's trying to service institutions? Overall performance. I don't think there is one report. I'd be happy to take that question offline and give you, I've been in this industry for about 10 years, and I can give you my take on different vendors across different expertise, whether they're the affiliates, whether they're their agencies, and who I think is good vendors to work with. It also depends on the type of school you are and what vendors might work best for you. Great. Okay, thanks. All right, so this is hopefully this doesn't put people to sleep here, but now we're getting into the data part of the the presentation. So this is kind of an example of a forecast. Call it a one-year forecast that it breaks up into sort of 4 areas. One is the start. So you first want to be projecting the number of starts, and this is actually by program as well. You can see special ed and bachelor's of criminal justice and so on and so forth. And you want to be projecting those students by start. You can use historical data to do that. You can use just seasonality data. You might not have 6 starts. You might have 5 starts. But I think this is really important to help you think through how this all plays out. Actually, even a layer above this is leads, and I don't want to complicate things too much. But the next part of this is then really what we call active earning students. Or really, these are then the students that are going to earn the revenue, and it's accumulation of students that just started with previous students, less sort of students that drop out or graduate. And that's really your unit economic driver of revenue. And then obviously there's a kind of a cost per credit hour and number of credits that then drive revenue. And then below that is your marketing expenditure. And one of the questions, I don't know if we're gonna do a poll here. Maybe that's in a few slides. But is what percentage of marketing do you spend as a percentage of revenue? And this is where you can work with your higher ups and your decision makers to sort of look at the revenue, look at the marketing expenditure, and really try to go out there and look at best practices and look at what the industry is doing and say, because I see schools sometimes that are spending 2% or 5% of revenue on marketing, which to me doesn't make any economic sense. I think if you want to be competitive, that number needs to be much higher. And so this kind of forecasting allows you to do that. So that's, I could talk about this slide for a long time, or if anybody has specific questions. Otherwise, I'm gonna go to the next slide. Yeah, so we're gonna do a poll now. So now let's get into the marketing and enrollment dashboards. So, before I jump into the dashboards, I want to highlight that this is where, marketing and enrollment really need to start working together and looking at the same data. The marketing team needs to understand the enrollment funnel, and the enrollment team needs to understand the marketing channels. Together, these two teams can produce the best results by working together. That's kind of like my my public service announcement, because I find that a lot of times these two ships are kind of not necessarily on the same shipping lines. Great. So before we kind of jump into some of the dashboards, I wanted to give you a look at how we look at the enrollment funnel. My colleague Jim Dunn created this chart and can give an entire webinar just with this one slide. But I wanted you to also, I think this is going to give you really good context for our next few slides. So yeah, so the way I look at this is that there's really 3 what we call active conversion rates, and that is, lead to contact rate, contact to application rate, application to acceptance rate, and acceptance to start rate. And then there's like 2 reactive conversion rates, which are lead to start rate and lead to application rate. We track all of these things. This is, you could be generating lots of leads, you can be doing lots of marketing, but you need to be understanding the enrollment funnel. And if this isn't maximized, you are going to be hurt in your efforts. And that's why I think that it is critically important that you are fully aware of what's going on in the enrollment funnel. And where things broken, you have to be a squeaky wheel to hopefully make change happen. So really, for the next 8 slides, what we're going to be doing is kind of looking at a mythical university and some various metrics. Okay, great. All right, so this slide, which I don't know how the font is coming across on your computer, it's a bit small on mine, but this is really an enrollment slide, and it tracks the applicants, enrolled students, and starts for the next 2 term periods. Let's for example, January, which all of you, probably the January start is either complete or just completing right now, but also looking out into March. You want to compare this against the goals, and this way, month over month, you really have a gauge of how you're trending, and therefore you can manage expectations, for your the people that you report to, and so on and so forth. Additionally, the slide shows, how things are trending week over week. So the second part, it shows, week over week trends. Obviously, there's seasonality to these issues, and month over month. And again, to me, applications is really kind of that sort of canary in the coal mine. How are those trending? Are they down? Are they up? And you need to be really watching that quickly to see how your institution is going to perform and whether your marketing efforts are yielding results. Okay, our next slide shows a summary of the lead funnel analysis, and we talked about the the upside down pyramid before. A few pointers here. One, this is really a 12-month lag, and I'm sorry, a 12-month average with a 1-month lag. We try to age. Leads have to age. I don't want to get too technical into things, but you need to be thinking about these things. Sometimes, ratios can look very off, and a lot of that sometimes has to do with measuring the right data at the right time periods. So if you've acquired a lead in the last month, it's going to take 6 months or 3 to 6 months for that lead to enroll. So you shouldn't be really putting that information into some of these conversion rates. If you look at the next thing, which are kind of your goals and your actuals of lead to contact rate, contact to app rate, and these are things that we watch pretty religiously. So, in the last sort of segment here, this just shows leads by month, kind of for the last 12 months, the applications, the number of starts, and also the marketing spend. So that's just good data to just kind of watch and keep your eye on. So we have a question right now. Mark, are you on the line? Mark, you're on the line.
Oh.
Mark, I think you're ready to go.
Okay. What was the percentage of conversions from enrollments to starts on your previous slide?
So enrollments to starts is really what we kind of call students that have been accepted to starts is 81%.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Again, everybody defines these things a bit differently, so I'd be happy to take any questions offline if you'd like. So the next two slides that we're going to look at break down the enrollment funnel by lead source. So the first slide that we're looking at right now highlights the organic lead sources, and again, we're looking back 12 months. And what we're trying to do here, and this is a lot of information, is we're trying to, we're measuring search traffic. And this is important, not just, search overall, but the branded traffic versus the non-branded traffic. Why is that important? Well, if you're doing lots of advertising out there and branding the school, you should be seeing increases in branded search. Just like you should be increases in leads to the school domain, directly to the what we call the online campus or that online marketing website. And so these are really important things. If you're doing paid efforts on non-branded keywords, is that helping your branded keywords? Or your organic non-branded keywords. So the other observation here, if you look at some of these conversion rates, is that you're going to see by doing this that your conversion rates are going to be significantly higher on organic type sources than non-organic type sources. For example, the overall organic source is like for school leads that come directly from a school are 15%, the school domain 6%, search is a little bit lower, 3%, and these are just averages, that we see on our end across, many of our efforts. I think we have a question right now.
We have
two questions.
One from Denise, who wants to know what qualifies as a lead. Is it email address?
Okay. Denise has a question, what qualifies as a lead? Well, that's a great question because not all leads are created equal and people define leads differently. The way we qualify a lead is a name and one form of contact information, whether that's an email or a phone number. And as long as, that's it, that is qualified as a lead. And if you want to go even a step lower, a contact is somebody that we're able to get on the phone even if we are told to get lost. They are considered a contact. So that's a great question. A lot of people define leads differently. And we have a second question, Carrie. And Carrie, you are on the line. Carrie, you there? You're on the line. Okay, well, we'll wait for Carrie. And as we're doing that, we will move to our poll question. Did you put the poll question out there? Okay, great. So, not sure what. Let me just look at the results here. Okay. So it looks like, you know, there's not a lot of measurement going on between cost per lead, cost per application, cost per start, or lifetime value. So what does that tell me? That tells me that there's a lot of opportunity for you all to start measuring these things, which I think over time will improve your performance. And I think also improve the dialogue with your sort of stakeholders, you know, who are trying to understand if what you're doing is effective. So this slide that we're on here, the paid slide, you know, measuring the same results, you know, it's measuring, you know, pay-per-click, which is a big category. It's measuring pay-per-lead, display, you know, email and other, not just the number of leads that you're getting, but also the percentage, you know, in the enrollment funnel percentage. And additionally, you know, this is where, and we just kind of did our poll, you know, we like to highlight 3 metrics. These are things I really recommend that you measure, which is cost per lead, cost per application, and cost per start. To me, these are the lifeblood of what you're doing and whether it's working or not. Okay, so this is a chart that we like to follow, and this really just measures. It's a simple 12-month, you know, look back on your marketing spend as it relates to cost per lead. And you know, this is, you know, important as you start to increase your expenditure, which hopefully many of you are in those situations, and to watch that cost per lead and making sure, you know, that things kind of stay in line. Also looking at it by different lead source and getting kind of a nice high-level overview of where those things stand. All right, so the next few slides are going to look pretty similar. This is a 12-month, what we call lead funnel analysis for all leads. So you're doing a kind of a cumulative 12-month average. So like, for example, this mythical school has been increasing the lead flow while you're looking at sort of your enrollment funnel conversion rates, your contact rate, your applied rate, acceptance rate, so on and so forth. And then you can, you know, even break it down by different lead sources, like, you know, organic leads, which we have in the next slide, you know, pay-per-click leads. You know, you can really look at, it just gives you a nice high overview of, you know, what type of conversion rates you have by lead source. So, you know, it's 3:57. I think we're doing great on time. This is a summary kind of really the table of contents, if you will, of creating an ideal marketing plan. And, you know, I hope you found this helpful. You know, from my perspective, you know, it's clear. I always have to get a very clear understanding of the current reality. You know, what is the big picture? What's the environment like, both externally and internally? You need to set clear goals to know that what you're doing is successful or not successful. You know, performing market research, I think, is incredibly smart to therefore make sound decisions, because if you have the wrong product, it doesn't matter how good your marketing is, you're going nowhere. Understanding all the different lead channel and opportunities that are for you out there, I think that's critical. And then being very smart on testing and iterating on some of these lead channels, and overall, and over time, trying to create a nice portfolio theory of working all the 3 different channels that we talked about: online, traditional, and partnerships. And finally, having a really robust execution process on, you know, everything from approvals and an implementation process to a clear budget to finally really good reports and dashboards for you, your colleagues, and your stakeholders to be able to understand what you're doing. So with that, you know, I think we're pretty much at an end here. I don't know if there's any other questions. I really appreciate so many of you have stayed on the whole time, and I'm glad I've been able to kind of stick to this 4 o'clock time. I'm going to just let it hold for about 30 seconds to see if we have any questions. Like I said, I'm perfectly happy to stay on the line for half an hour. I am going to send out the presentation to everybody. My email address is on there. If you would like to email me any questions, feel free to do so. Okay, a couple just quick announcements. We have another webinar coming up on student retention on March 5th. That should be an exciting one. And then in April, we have a webinar assessing instructor readiness to teach online. And then also we have a user conference, or what we call Connect conference, at late June, right here in Louisville, Kentucky. And that's a great way to just sort of get a great best practices around all sorts of online education functions, not just marketing. So I think we're pretty much at a close here.
A few questions.
Okay, great.
Wayne wants to know what is the recommended percentage of revenue for marketing spend?
Wayne asks a great question. What is the recommended percentage of revenue to marketing spend? Well, I would say it's a nuanced answer. I would say, as a going concern, you probably want to be in the 20% to 25% range from my perspective. You know, maybe it could be 18%, maybe it could be 27%, depending on how aggressive you want to be. And when I say going concern, because it's important that as you ramp up, the way our business model works in higher education is you spend money now, you're lucky to enroll in that student in 6 months, and that student produces revenue over several years. So as you're ramping up, your percentage of revenue could be 50%, could be 75%, could be over 100% of revenue. So that's an important conversation you need to have internally. But I would say, as a going concern, in sort of a steady state, you should be thinking about in that 20% or so range. Wendell is on the telephone. Wendell, you're on the line.
Yes, Todd, can you hear me?
Yeah, I hear you great.
Okay, a couple slides ago you were showing a monthly ad spend breakdown. I was wondering if you could go over what the various components were in there. For example, you had something, it was, I believe, yeah, this one right there.
Yep.
What for example, are you calling display, the advertising for display?
So display would be probably banner ads and leaderboards, really what we call CPM advertising, where you're buying, you know, on a CPM ad network, or, you know, a local news website, or a teaching specific website. That's what display is for us, the way we categorize it.
And you had mentioned billboard. Would you lump that under the print category then?
Right now, you know, I would lump that probably under other. I mean, this was just kind of like you know, if your university spends 10 or 20% on billboard, that would then be worthy of calling out as its own section. You know, we don't do enough billboard to sort of, like, I just kind of arbitrarily somewhat created this stuff. But yeah, that would be its own category if it was big enough.
Okay, thanks. That's helpful.
Outdoor, you know, because we do a fair amount of outdoor, we call it, you know, not just billboards, but bus shelters, kiosks, that kind of stuff.
Thank you.
You got it. Denise has got a question.
How many admissions counselors, phone contact folks do you need for 1,000 leads?
How many admissions counselors, folks, do you need for 1,000 leads? Wow, you are testing my expertise right now. So I'm assuming that those 1,000 leads are over a year. I mean, that's an important metric. Are you getting that, you know, within one day? I mean, here's the math. The math for me is that, let's just take an average. This is like a management consulting question. On average, you should probably be supplying, and it depends on the quality of lead, 10 new leads a day per admissions counselor, okay? So if you took 220 business days, you're getting, let's say, 2,200 leads. So I would probably if your question is for 1,000 leads per year per school, then I would have a half of an admissions counselor for 1,000 leads. That's my answer. That's my final answer. Okay, any other questions? Okay, everyone, I hope you've found this helpful, and Good luck growing and building very successful online programs. Thanks, and have a great day.